Hello and welcome to Unify's webinar on QIS data export and import. This is your host, Paul Lamelli. We have a lot of people joining us for today's webinar, so for those of you that are new to Unify Corporation, I'm going to go ahead and paint a couple of broad strokes for you. Unify is a publicly traded software company. We've been in business for over 30 years. We're probably best known for being the first to deliver a relational database to the Unix environment about 30 years ago. Now, since then, we've delivered software development products that run across different databases and platforms that are geared to building and modernizing business applications for the business application developer who places a premium on productivity over low-level coding. Now, today, our business has expanded beyond database and development products into migration solutions, as well as e-discovery and email archiving. For today's webinar, we do encourage questions, so if you have one, please use the Q&A button on your WebEx toolbar. It is a button that is marked with a question mark. There is also a chat feature, but it makes it much easier for both Martin and myself to look at one panel for questions just to make sure that we get all of them answered. And with that, today's presenter is Martin Tietz. Martin has been with Unify for, I guess, over 15 years now in various roles, including support engineer, product marketing manager, and director of product management, I believe is their current title. Correct, Martin?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. So Martin is joining us today from Germany, and I believe it's already early evening over there. It's a great opportunity and a real privilege to have someone with his background and experience with Q presenting today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Martin to begin the presentation and demo.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'd like to share a few things about Q with you today. The topic today is how to use Q in the IT department, and kind of the subtitle for all that is what kind of data management things can I do with Q. So I have prepared a number of scenarios for exporting data with Q. I will show you or will let you know what kind of things you can export with Q. I will, of course, demonstrate that live with live data, not only small tables, and also do things with larger tables and queries, things like that. I've prepared a number of scenarios for importing data. I will tell you how exactly you use Q to import data. And then, of course, we will look at how to do that with the product. And you will be able to see that live in this demonstration. At the end, I will talk a little bit about the Q products that are available, the pricing, and how you can buy Unify Q. So initially, for IT, this is, I think, quite important because in IT, you probably have not only one database, but database from multiple providers, probably SQL-based in some version, Oracle 10 or 11, SQL Server 2005 or 2008, and ODBC. So those are the supported Q databases, and you can pretty much export anything from a SQL-based database, import that into Oracle, or create a SQL Server query, a very complex query, unload that data, and then load that into a SQL-based table, for example. So just the initial things that you know what kind of databases are supported with Q. Q data exporting scenarios. If you are in IT, you probably are tasked with things like moving data from one database to another. That might be in the case when there's a company merger or your company buys another company and that company has a different CRM system and you need to get the data of the bought company into the owner's company database, and that's something that you can do with Q. For example, you could unload the data from the bought company into an Excel file and then update that data, for example, update the primary keys to match your primary key scheme, and then load that data into your own CRM system. You can, for example, move data from production systems to archiving systems to reduce the amount of data in production systems. There are customers that generate huge amounts of data per month, per year, and they want to, every once in a while, purge that data out of the production system and move that to an archiving system. So one can still access it, but it's not getting in the way in the day-to-day operations. Provide data views to external agents for emailing services. For example, your marketing or your sales department worldwide is probably banging you to get data out of your databases to send customer emails out there and things like that. You can unload data to edit it and reload it, so any form of data editing in between can be done. And, of course, you can create new tables from complex queries, so kind of de-standardization, but might be necessary in some cases in IT, I think. So, exporting data with Q. You can export data in Q in two activities, as we call that. In Q we have a table activity and a query activity plus some others, but the table and query activity are basically the places where you can export data from. You can export data into a number of formats. There is like machine-readable formats, like XML and comma-separated values. You can unload those and then load those again into other databases or other systems. You can unload the data to HTML format, which is more kind of a self-contained HTML file that lets you share that data with others. I don't know, maybe get the customer list to one of your colleagues and see, if you know those or things like that. And of course to Excel. So with Excel, I think one scenario would be that you unload data from Q, from a table or a query, into an Excel file, and then you can go into Excel to further process that data to do complex calculations that a database per se wouldn't be the greatest thing to use for, or for charting in Excel. And of course, you can also load that into other databases or systems. Hello? I'm just trying to get to the next slide now. Yes, here we go. Okay, exporting demo. Let me switch to Q really now. I do have on my machine, to explain you what's running here on my laptop locally, I have a SQL Base 11.6 running. That's an upcoming SQL Base release that will be launched later this year before Team Developer 6. Then I have a local Oracle database installed, I believe version 11, and a SQL Server, I think 2005. And I can use Q to connect to all of these and work on the data, create queries, unload and load into systems like that. So right now, let me explain a few things with Q. Q is an application that uses a ribbon like Office 2007. So if you're using Office 2000 Excel or Word, you probably learn Q pretty quickly. One of the most important things of Q is the activities ribbon that allows you to choose what things to do. You can create something new, like a new query, a new report. You can create new SQL. New SQL is like typing SQL for very, very complex data processing tasks. New table, we will see that later. And you can, of course, open queries, open reports, open SQL, and open a table. Now, the first thing you basically do is click on that databases thing here, on the databases ribbon, and that brings up the login dialog that Q has built in. And that login dialog is set up on the left hand. You have a tree view of the available databases that have been configured for use on this machine. You can see these are grouped by database. So that for SQL Base, there's a number of databases that I can access. There's one Oracle database and one SQL Server database that I have access to from my Q installation on this machine here. First thing is, let's start off with something easy. Server1.island. You all get this database, and that's our favorite demo database. I click on that, and you see that the username and password has been filled in. It's stored encrypted, and nobody can hack that. But it's a nice feature because it allows me to connect to that database without typing my password. I can do a test connection and see if that works. In this case, I'm lucky it works. Connect, and now I'm connected, and you see that in the status bar below what database and user is currently being used. So if I now want to do something, and I'm really in the business of showing you how to export data now, what I do is I do open table, and then I get a list of available tables in that database. It's our famous island database here. And let me choose something simple initially. Just choose the company table, and now you have that grid window with the company. With the company data in it. I'm not sure what happened here. And and when you open a table, you see that a table ribbon opens that wasn't there previously. So there's an activity-related ribbon that gets inserted once you open an activity. And in that ribbon here, you can now print the contents. You can create a report. Print content is a quick print feature, and create a report is something more complex, where you can create your own formatting and things like that. In the table activity, you can import from and export to. Right now we are on the exporting side, and I want to show you how you can export the data of this table into an HTML file. Now, it's pretty easy. Just click on HTML, choose the location where you want to save that, and I want to save that on my desktop for now. Then I can choose between a number of themes. Let's say I want to use the purple theme, and with Create HTML, it creates it. Actually, before that, it asks what kind of decimal and thousand separator it should be using. That is to support, international number formatting. I just keep it what is being suggested here right now. So now that file has been created, let me go to my desktop and show you that file really quick. Where's the HTML file? Islands Company 1712. Yeah, that has been created right now. So I do a double click on this file, and you see the data has been exported in HTML format. It's quite nicely formatted. You see even a cursor, that highlights the current line has been implemented into that HTML file. And you can now go ahead and send that file to a colleague or give that to anybody else you like to. That formatting is completely self-contained in that one HTML file. Let me just close this here and open the HTML from Notepad++. And here you see that the HTML contains the style definitions for all this in the top of the HTML. So there's no external file you need to view this file, to view this HTML when you send that to somebody else. Okay, so that was the very easy HTML part. Now let me close this table and let me change to another database. I want to change to SQL Server now. SQL Server, let's do this again. I love this. Test connection success, yeah. Okay, connect. And now you see at the bottom in the status bar that I'm connected to SQL Server with my username. Actually, SQL Server is using the integrated operating system authentication at the moment, so I can log on with my Windows password here. So now I can again open a table. For example, I can open the contact table, and I get the contact data here from SQL Server now. And let me show you how to export different things now. Export to XML now. Again, place the file on my desktop. In the case of XML, you're being asked if you want to have just the XML file or the XML file including the data schema, which is the XSD file. I want to have both right now. And again, I'm being asked for the decimal and the thousand separator. So I've created the XML file. Go back to the Windows Explorer. And I think this one here, the quick tip 1715, yeah, that's the one that has been created. at this moment, and in Notepad++, that nicely shows me the formatted XML that has been created for this. And there should also be this file here, which is the schema file, which describes the XML that's in the XML file, which is in XML format as well here. Okay, we will reuse these files later when we are talking about importing, so I don't delete them. I keep them on my desktop here. And let me see. Let me close that, and now we're going to do something more complex. What I want to do is go back to the island database. Connect, so I'm back connected to SQL Base now. And I want to create a query that I then want to export the data from. So now that it's not the case that I want to export a complete table, but I want to export query results. And that's also how you can export, data from multiple tables into one file. Basically, what you do is you join these tables in the query here. And here you get the query definition dialog. Oh, I think I didn't mention that Q is also available during installation. You can choose the language of the user interface, and you can install that in German, English, French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese, I think. So now let me define a query here, and I want to join the invoice and invoice item table. Luckily, Q guesses the right join here. And now let me switch off a few columns that I don't need. For example, the invoice number is there 2 times. I don't need that 2 times in the exported data. And well, the rest is okay. I can export all that. I can set conditions. I don't want to set conditions. I want to get the complete join data of both tables. In sorting, I can go ahead and say, gee, I want this sorted by date paid, I think is a good idea. And then switch to the SQL tab, and you can see the SQL that is being generated, sent to the database. You can also copy that and reuse that in Team Developer if you like. So okay, and now I get the data view of the query. And as you see, the report ribbon opens up, which contains all the features and functionality that you need when creating queries and reporting. If I click Edit Query, I go back to the Query Definition dialog, and I can change my query. I can refresh the query, and then, of course, export. And that's the thing that I wanted to do here. And in this case now, I want to export that as an Excel file. Again, I want to save that as an XLS file on my desktop. That's kind of what I wanted to do. And see, with Excel, it didn't ask me about the local thousand and decimal separator because Excel handles that automatically for you. If I open let's say an Excel file that has been created by my colleagues in the United States, which has a decimal point, if I open that in Germany, Excel will display a decimal comma automatically. So let's go to that file. Island System Invoice created at 1718. No, this is exactly the file. Double click on it. Excel opens the file, and you can see all the data in it. So basically, the join data is in there. If I wanted to load that into an existing different table, I could update the keys now, edit some data, things like that. Or I can use that data to create charts in Excel. I can use that data to create complex calculations that spreadsheets are made for. Let me close that now. Again, we have that file. And let me see. Yeah, we have that file, and I think that's all I wanted to show you about exporting, really. I will continue to use all these files that I've created in the importing demo, really. So let's now switch to and this is one thing that I tend to forget in my presentation is that all the queries and reports can be saved, and I can now also save that query, and a CQT file will be created, give that a name. Queue today, save. And, now I can always reopen that query file. And, like I can re-execute that query every week to find out what data has changed or export the latest bunch of data and things like that. And, of course, in conditions you can, for example, the scenario that I mentioned before, when you want to purge data from a system that has been created during the past months, then you would just have a condition, where a date smaller than, last month or something like that. And then you would select that data and, go ahead. Okay, so go back to the presentation. Now going to the importing scenarios. You can load external mailing lists from mail providers, for example. You can load external sales data from agencies or online store. For example, online stores that you buy probably won't have the same data model that your CRM system again has. You somehow want to get the electronic sales from the online store into your CRM system, then you can do that with Q. Load data from merged companies into one combined database. So it's the second step of such a merger or acquisition scenario. Load data to create customer-facing DBs for apps or customer apps. Just think for web apps, that was there. I couldn't read this. This web app thing is in my way. Just a second. Chat. So here we go. The WebEx controls, you can't see that, but the WebEx controls kind of get in the way of some of my screen real estate. So load data into archive DBs, load sample DBs for sales. So there's many things. I've put up a few here, but I'm sure you have many more things that you could do with Q, many more ideas of things that you can do with Q. So importing data with Q. You can do that from the table activity. Actually, each activity has two modes. And in the table activity, you have the new table mode. This is where you load an existing file from your file system into a new table that will be created on the fly when you load that, or you load the data into an existing table. You can load data from comma-separated values, XML, and from Excel. And we also have Outlook. But Outlook I won't show you because that's really simple. So let's go back to Q and have a look at this. In Q, I now actually want to create a new table. So I want to import the data that I have created in my last query that has been exported into an Excel file, and I want to create a new table in an Oracle database from that Excel file. So let me first go to the database login dialog again, connect to Oracle, or set Oracle as the active database actually. So in the status bar, you now see database XE user Martin. And now what I do is I tell Q I want to create a new table. New table name, invoice paid or something. It's called this way. And then I want to create that from a file, and in this case an Excel file. So I just have to pick the right file here, which is, I think, this one that we just created a few minutes ago, and just say OK here. So now Q goes ahead and analyzes that Excel file and proposes the table structure for the table in Oracle. And as you can see, it's intelligent enough to find out that Oracle doesn't have varchar, but has varchar2 column names and things like that. So it knows what Oracle can do and what not. So what remains to do here is in the first column, you see data samples of that table for every of these columns and how it is proposing to do those. You could now go ahead and change some of that. Maybe increase the size of character fields. Change from integer to decimal, and such things. Let me switch into edit mode here, and let me actually define primary keys now. And the primary key is now this one combined with the item number. So I joined invoices, so invoice number and item number is the new combined key here. And then I had to change one more thing. As you can see here, it has proposed a column name of this adm.invoice.invoice number, I think, and dot can't be part in a column name in Oracle database, so I got to get rid of that. Invoice number. And with apply edits, you save these. You actually create the table in Oracle. You create the table in Oracle, and now you get a warning that it kind of falls over. This adm.invoice.invoice number doesn't equal invoice number, but that's okay. It kind of warns you, but guesses the right thing anyway. So it guesses it right. So it got the invoice number in here and loads all the data. And that data at the moment is only loaded into the grid here. And again, with apply edits, you save that data back to the database. And that's what I'm doing now. Now I've created a new table in Oracle from a query that has been created on a SQL-based database initially. Okay. Actually, yeah, okay. Now, let me do some more importing. I'm again in Oracle. And now let me do a new query from the XML file that we created. Oh, no, not query, new query. I'm wrong. I don't want to do a new query. Cancel. I want to create a new table from an XML file. New table name. From file. XML. And this time the XML file is coming from the SQL Server ODBC SQL Server context table. Okay. And now again, it guesses how to create that table in Oracle. I think the contact ID should be the primary key. I need to switch into edit mode. Put the contact ID as primary key. No, I don't put any primary key because then I can show you to load into existing data as well. So, I'm not doing proper data processing here, just showing you things, so I don't need a primary key at the moment. Apply edits. No primary key defined. Table has been created. Yep. Good news. The data is being loaded into the grid, and with apply edits, you save that data into the database. So now I've created that contact table from an XML file in an Oracle database. And now, as I already have a table activity open, I actually want to add data to that table, and I want to import additional data into this table. That's why I didn't create a primary key, because I now will load that XML file into this table again. If I would have created a primary key, then I couldn't load again the same keys, of course. Apply edits. I really love this. Load it. Apply edits. Just let your databases do the work for you. Here we go. So this is the import into existing tables. The more I do that, the more rows exist in that table. And the last demonstration really, let me get back to that query that I created previously. That was on the SQL-based Island database. And I open that query. Didn't I save that? Q today is the name. This one. I created this one. And I can now, create that into a report and print PDF. But now I really want to do something different. I don't want to use this query here because this query doesn't contain a lot of data. Let me use a database that contains a lot of data, and then show you the last kind of export thing that we have, which is creating PDFs. And let me connect to our Gupta Web database, which is basically a copy of the web database that we are using on our website that is being used to register users on the website and to save all the downloads that are happening, like when you download a TD or Q trial version, that gets stored in the database. So login successful. I'm now connected to server 1.guptaweb, and I want to do a new query that kind of pulls a little bit more data than I did before today. So I want to use, actually, let me do something quick, not a complex query, but there's a table called TBL user, and from that user table, let me just choose a few columns. No worries, we're not saving IP addresses of users. This is just a field here. Okay. So now here's the data, and now I'd like to go into report preview mode, really. What's now happening is that the query is being converted into a report, and you see the report here. I can now go ahead and change the design of the report. For the user ID, for example, remove the comma or the decimal thing there, just a number. I can go ahead and change the font if I like. All the things you can. If you go into the background, you can define the watermark. I want a text watermark. Unify Q. And it should be a bit larger font. Color, Unify blue, including a washout effect. Okay. Oops. Okay. And now I can go into report preview mode. Resize this, zoom in, and see the Unify Q watermark there. And now I do a print PDF. Yes, I can accept that file name. That's again on my desktop. Print all. Then it will show the PDF settings dialog that allows you to define kind of the resolution of the PDF and influence the size of the generated PDF. Just leave it as standard. And now it will take a little bit of time, because this is, I didn't actually scroll through the report here, but this will probably create a report with around 2,000 pages. And, that will take maybe a minute or so. Let's jump back to Q here. Yeah, you still have the hourglass here that's running. So right now it's writing that probably 2,000 page report into a PDF file on my desktop. And, this is database data processing. It can take a little bit of time, of course. Oh, I think it's done. So go back to the desktop. Here's the PDF file. I'm talking all the time about Team Developer 6 and WPF, so I'm always said, oh, here's the WPF file now. Different thing. So here's the PDF file that got created with the watermark in it. And here on top you can see it's got 2,094 pages in it. And I can scroll in here, and if I scroll there and leave the before it showed a nice location window there. It doesn't do that now. Okay. But, if I scroll to the end, you see that I'm now at page 2094 of 2094. So I created a fairly large piece of PDF here that contains all our website users. Let me see. It's an 8 megabyte PDF file in this case. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation here. Q in IT departments. Update non-integrated internal systems. Integrate data pools after company mergers. You can create MIS reports for managers, for management, website statistics, marketing campaign results. You can update, insert, delete data from databases. You can export and import data. Here are some of the scenarios that we did. You can open a table in SQLbase or in any other database and copy that table definition and data to a new table in any other database. Create a complex query using SQLbase or any other database, and from that query, unloaded query, create a new table in a different database. One of the samples, you receive an Excel file, edit the data, load that data into SQLbase, update. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting chat here. I have to stop this for a second. Yeah. Modern computing. Hello. Sorry, I need to just switch that off now. Yeah. Yeah, the next thing is that Twitter will talk into my presentation or something like that. Okay, so you receive an Excel data from marketing agency, create that new table in SQLbase, update the values, and things like that. Oops, that was too fast now. Merge data. Create a big query that retrieves data from a CRM system. Create a new local temporary table, update the temporary table data, export that data into an Excel file, import that into your existing CRM. So there's many ways how you can do data processing with Q if you're in IT. So somehow this always loses the focus. Now. So let's talk a bit about what Unify Q contains and how it can be installed. Unify Q contains actually a read-only version. If you want to have your users, or if you don't trust basically some of your users that don't have too deep database knowledge and you fear that they will delete production data, then you can install the read-only version of Q, which is an installer setting. And then even users that have the right in the database to drop, manipulate data won't be able to do that from Q. And of course, Unify Q can be installed full-featured as I have it here, with the full database rights available from Q. SQLbase 11.5 is included. It includes the SQLbase Command Center for scheduled backups and things like that. Oh yeah, here's the language support I mentioned earlier: English, German, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. The different products you can get from us is the 45-day trial from our web version. This installation can be activated to a full product. You can buy the installation key for the full product from our online store for $495 or Euro 329. Gonna move that. Okay, and then we have a 25 user license and a 50 user license of Q. Another option is to include Q into your application deployment. So if you think that Q is useful to your users because, for example, you have parts of your data model that your application doesn't cover, like property tables that you want certain users to be able to manipulate, then you can give them Q to modify and change those tables. Or users that want to create their own reporting, that want to create their own custom stuff, be it queries, be it reports, be it SQL. For those, Unify Q is the perfect thing. And the Unify Q EDP, as it's called, Embedded Deployment Pack, actually acts as a silent install that can be triggered from your application install. So during the installation of your application, you could silently install Unify Q with that. That's really it from me. If you want to buy Q now, go to https://store.unify.com and go ahead. All you need is a credit card.
Great. So this is your host, Paul Lemele, reminding you to use your Q&A button on your WebEx toolbar, marked with a question mark if you have any questions. I have seen a couple of questions coming in, so we will go ahead and give you just a quick minute to get all of those questions in, and we will go ahead and start answering them for you. Alrighty, so the first question that we had coming in, I think Martin already answered, but the question was, is there an evaluation version of Q available? And yes, there is an evaluation version of Q available on our website. It is actually, I believe, a full version of the software, but it does time out after 45 days. So on our products page on our website, you can download that evaluation version of the software. The next question, Martin, you might be able to help me out with this. I get it quite often. The question is, can I use my old Quest files with the new version of Q?
Yes, you can. Actually, I created a video on YouTube that go to the Unify YouTube channel, YouTube/Unify Corp, and there is a video that shows you exactly how to do that. I don't have the time to show that right now, but you can basically load the Quest query and report files and create, in Quest, you had a separate query and a report file. In Q, you have a combined query and report file, but you can combine those in Q and you reuse the existing files that you have from Quest, absolutely.
Good. And if you do have any further questions about that, always contact your local Unify representative, and they will be more than happy to point you in the right direction. So if there are no more further questions, I think that we're going to go ahead and conclude today's webinar on QIS data export and import. Be sure to mark your calendars for the upcoming developers conferences scheduled for November in Europe, and I believe it's December here in the U.S. And like I said, if you have any further questions, contact your local Unify representative. If you don't happen to know who that is offhand, you can send your email questions to info@unify.com, and somebody will get back to you. Also, make sure that you fill out the surveys at the conclusion of this webinar, and feel free to suggest any topics that you would like Unify to cover in the future. Many of the webinars that we do have or have done in the past have come through suggestions through the survey, so definitely give us your ideas on those. So thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.